All right, let's talk about the five biggest breakout players from the NFL season this year. I'm excited for this one. We got a couple sleepers on this list. We got a couple guys you might expect. And maybe perhaps we got a quarterback that everyone cannot stop talking about and debating about. But without further ado, to me, a breakout player is someone who excelled and exceeded the expectations that people outside had for them. All right, coming in number five, we got Isaiah Likely. Now, I'm a little biased. I interned with the football team Isaiah Likely went to, but that's neither here nor there. Isaiah Likely had a monster preseason. He put up a good numbers, and the preseason kind of foreshadowed what was going to happen. He was in a crowded tight end room with the Ravens. Of course, they have more tight ends than anyone else in the league. They might have more tight ends than anyone else who's ever played in the NFL. Regardless, there were other high-performing rookie tight ends this year, but none who produced in only two starts like Isaiah Likely did. Other tight ends who had similar numbers started 11, 13 games. This man only started 2 games. He had 60 targets this year, so obviously the Ravens value him as a receiver and a player. Lamar Jackson was singing his praises, and it wasn't so much the production, but it was breakout star plays like the one you just saw. All right, coming on to number four, we got my boy, Keyshawn Nixon. Now, Keyshawn Nixon, you know you had to ball out to make this list from special teams. He might not be at the top of the list because he was a special teamer. You don't get as many chances to influence the game. He's out of South Carolina. And he played for the Raiders before this, and he didn't get that many returns. I mean, he literally had a handful of returns in a couple of years. But sometimes players just get in a flow, man. And Nixon, the second half of the season, had a ton of confidence, and he was taking every return, even if he caught it 9 yards deep in the end zone. He was undrafted out of USC. He was mostly coverage players when he played for the Raiders, but Rich Bisaccia, who was the special teams coach and then interim coach for the Raiders, then went to Green Bay, brought Nixon with him, and he did not disappoint. He had over 1,000 return yards, and that's just on kickoff return, and he had some good punt returns too, compared to less than 100 in his first 3 years. Now that to me is the definition of a breakout player. Also, he played a little bit of defense and had a couple tackles, or more than a couple. I think he had about 15, which is pretty consistent, so he wasn't a breakout player on defense, but as a returner, man, he was scary. He's one of my favorite players to watch in the league, and he made kick returns fun again when I haven't really, everyone looks away when they return punts nowadays and kicks, and whenever he was touching the ball, man, I was glued to the TV. The funniest part is look at these two pictures, him running past the Cowboys kicker for a long return, and then running past the Vikings kicker in the next picture for a similar return. Man, that to me, that's just comedy, and it really goes to show, it kind of symbolizes how fun this player was this year. All right, coming in at number three, we got Isaiah Hodgins for the Giants. Isaiah Hodgins was a sixth-round pick from Oregon State, who was on the Bills practice squad in 2021. Most of the season, he was on the practice squad for the Bills this year too, and the Giants offered him a contract to the active roster because they had a depleted wide receiver core. Kenny Golladay wasn't performing. They had traded Kadarius Toney, and over the course of the second half of the season, he became pretty much a legit number one option. He's got a bigger frame. He's got good hands. He had 0 drops on the season. And he has great wide receiver IQ. I read an article saying, and he was talking about, he being Isaiah Hodgins, talking about how much he learned from Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders when he was in Buffalo. Of course, Brian Daboll, the Giants coach, was his coach, his offensive coordinator back in Buffalo. He only played 8 games for the Giants, had 5 starts, and had 350 yards with 4 scores. That's more touchdowns than any other Giants receiver, and he only had 5 starts. Had a 78% catch rate, which is how many times the receiver catches the ball when they're targeted. Usually, players who have that high of a catch rate are tight ends. Tight ends have solid hands, and they're usually running more short and intermediate routes than deep routes. And he, of course, as I mentioned before, he had 0 drops on the season. Hodgins here might not make headlines, but it took him from a practice squad player to a real top option on a playoff team who likely is going to be re-signed. Number 2, Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker has a second-round pick with a really good college career. I mean, I think he scored like 6 touchdowns in one game in Michigan State. Had the highest expectations of anyone on the list, but he was still drafted to a crowded Seattle team who had Travis Homer, Rashad Penny, DJ Dallas, and a lot of draft experts when Seattle picked him, we're saying this was another bonehead, weird pick by Seattle, and now those predictions seem like ancient history because Walker exploded this season. He had over 1,000 yards on a playoff team. He's got a unique blend of speed, bounds, vision, and receiving ability. Had some good receiving stats this year. And it looks like Seattle found a franchise running back for at least the next few years. Alright, and now I've been waiting all video for this. I'm not going to lie. We're going to talk about Tyreek freaking Woolen. He's probably my favorite defensive player in the league right now. He's got football analysts just drooling over his potential. To put Tyreek Woolen's game simply, he's the biggest and fastest corner on the field, pretty much in the NFL. So why is he a breakout player? Well, he was a 5th-round pick. Why was he a 5th-round pick? Because he's cut from the Trayvon Diggs school of turning from a receiver to a corner, which seems to be all the rage these days, taking a big, lengthy guy who might not have the ability to be an elite tier wide receiver and turning him into a corner just as long as he's willing to be a dog. And Tyreek Woolen is a dog. What people didn't understand about him, despite his extremely high RAS score, relative athletic score, which measures combine numbers and other stuff like that, they underestimated his technique and his ball skills and his instincts. He's got 6 picks on the year, including one over the GOAT, Tom Brady, and he's got a bunch of pass breakups. He's got 50 solo tackles. He blocked a kick that got returned for a touchdown. And man, the sky is just the limit for Tyreek Woolen. He got an endorsement for Richard Sherman. Should be a great player for years to come. Alright, like, sub. I appreciate you guys watching this video. Oh, but wait, we're not done. Yes, I put Brock Purdy in the thumbie. Yes, I'm calling it a thumbie. You can't stop me, unless you can. Please don't. But yeah, he's undoubtedly the breakout player of the year. I mean, Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the 7th round, got thrust into a starting lineup on a playoff caliber team, 5-0, 2+ touchdowns in every game he's been to, 13 tutties in total, 4 interceptions. I mean, the man's been playing well, like it or not, and people are going to argue whether it's him, whether it's 49ers, but hey, whether it's the chicken or the egg, you're still eating chicken salad, and they're going to the playoffs, and he's got him in a chance for a Super Bowl run. It's going to be really fun to watch.